Hello, love. So happy to be back with you. Oh my gosh, here we are. My beautiful co-host, Coach Jen, is here with us. I'm so excited. It's funny. Jen and I, we haven't recorded in a little bit. And so we're excited to be back together and talking to you. We have lots of fun things coming up in Transform Boss and Be Fly Coaching. And I tell you, here we are. We're almost in September. We're coming down to the end of 2024. And, I love the end of the year, just like I like a beginning of the year, but I like the end of the year. I like to think about, what have I done this year? What has went well? What do I want to start thinking about doing for next year? And how do I want to care for myself? And when I think of caring for myself, I think of it not only my physical health, but my mental health and my mental well-being and my emotional life, right? And it's such an important part. And, the longer I live on this planet and the longer I have this journey, I realize my brain always was focused on weight loss for so long. I mean, it occupied so much of my mind. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to be look a certain way and, all of these things. And it's so interesting because as I'm getting older now, there's so much more to me, to my being that I want to occupy my mind with. I want to improve relationships. I want to continue to build my confidence. I want to grow in areas, in my spirituality, the way that I care for my body, nothing to do with weight, but just in the way that I care for it, the way that I care and take care of myself. And you will see over time that I'm going to transition. I've been a lot about weight loss and I love it. I am going to continue always to help women lose weight if that's what they want to do. But really what I've always done, especially in my membership, is help women think differently so they can feel differently. So ultimately, they can do differently and get the results in their life that they want. And I believe that we are all worthy and deserving of the life that we want, the life that we create. And I'm a coach. I have been a coach probably my whole life, actually. I was probably a little girl like, hey, tell me about your feelings because I love being a life coach and I love helping women. I love watching transformation and watching them just transform into whatever they want to be, whatever that is for them, whatever stage of their life they're at. That's what I'm going to continue to help women do. And so I'm going to bring on topics on the podcast that are related to building your confidence, building relationships, finances, just the whole realm of different topics, including, of course, weight loss and caring for yourself and your body. But I really want to start diving into your mindset and your emotional well-being because I don't think we talk about it enough. And we live lives where we have emotions that we don't want to feel. And so we use things to buffer and to numb ourselves, like food and alcohol and TV and social media. And it just leaves us feeling numb. It leaves us feeling in this way that, I don't want for anyone. And it's not that all of us don't feel that way sometimes. It's just allowing yourself to also feel really amazing. It's so funny. I went to lunch or dinner with my cousin the other night. We laughed so hard. I'm not even kidding. We were laughing so hard. I could not even. And this, always our dinners are about 3.5 hours long. That's just how they roll. And I just had the best time because I just allowed myself to be really present with her. I wasn't in a rush. We cried, we laughed, we talked about everything in life. And I wasn't thinking about what we were eating. I could care less. It was just about being in that moment. And we miss so many important moments in our lives because we're worried about what we look like. We're worried about if people like us. We're worried about, all these things. And then we numb ourselves out. So I wanted just to give you that little heads up as you start to see. I've always talked about these things, but you'll just see more of an emphasis in the podcast. If you're in Transform Boss, we always say weight loss is just the cherry on top. I really help women transform their lives. I help them in whatever area of their life that they are needing help in. And it can be an array of things, it can be relationships with their kids or their moms or their spouses. It can be the relationship they have with themselves. And, Coach Jen is the director of our coaching, and she can tell you, because she does a lot of private one-on-one coaching with our clients, it is everything that she coaches ladies on. So Jen, as I was talking and I was, talking about how we're just moving the business to a life coaching business, which is always has been. It's just, I would say on the podcast, I've done more on weight loss, but we really want to kind of take it to other topics that we do in Transform Boss, because I really want to help you, the listener, live your best life in a body that you love.
Ooh, I just think it's a nice little bonus that now you ladies get to hear a little piece of the membership, like what goes on more in this podcast, because it really is. We joke that everybody comes in for weight loss and then it becomes the cherry on top because we work through all of these other things, right? Relationships, our thoughts, emotions, all these different things. So I love that we are transitioning in this way, because if I had to choose like the most important thing, it is relationships and mindset work and all of this, right? Without that, none of the other stuff carries much of a weight in our lives. So I
Yeah.
love that we're kind of going this direction.
I do too, because you can lose all your weight and still be very unhappy and still numb yourself with other things. I remember when, I had gastric bypass back in 2006. And I remember at the time them really warning me about, like, hey, be careful, because, people will start to become sex addicts or alcoholics or, all these other ways to numb because they didn't have food anymore. And so I think about this too with, it's just a tool, right? Like everything else, like a food plan is a tool, or even our Transform Boss are tools. The weight loss drugs, they're tools, which is great. I think, ladies, you do whatever it is that you need to do and work on your mind and emotional health, because it has to be an and, it cannot be an or, because you can lose all the weight and still feel extremely, extremely sad and frustrated and not liking yourself. And you just take your brain with you. And then suddenly you've lost all the weight and you feel good for, a little bit. And then suddenly you're just like, oh, but this didn't solve this. I don't like my relationship. I still talk horribly to myself. I don't like the loose skin. I'm getting older. And it takes me into the topic that Jen and I are going to talk through today, which is relationships. We're going to do a little two-part episode. And this first part is the relationship with yourself. And I've done a lot of work on the relationship with myself. I didn't really know what that meant. Like, what is the relationship with yourself? And, it's learning how to talk to yourself in a way, learning how to think differently about yourself. It's also keeping commitments to yourself and putting yourself on the list. As women, we don't get on the list a lot. And then we feel really resentful about it, actually. And then, which just leads us to feeling negative emotion and then not wanting to feel the negative emotion. And then we eat or we drink. And again, all of this is when you do it to excess, right? Having a glass of wine is fine, right? Eating a cupcake. I teach ladies eat a cupcake, but it's when you're doing it and you have negative consequences from it, right? I love to watch a good Netflix show. But if I'm doing that 8 hours every day, that has a negative consequence in my life. And so all of this can be fine until it becomes buffering. And so this relationship with yourself is about starting to think differently about yourself, starting to talk to yourself in a different way. We all have negative thinking and this negative chatter that goes on in our brain. And for some of you, you might not even notice it because it's so common for you. It's been such a habit thought of I'm not enough, I'm too fat, I'm ugly, I'm dumb, I'm, all the negative stuff, right? And it's just this thing. You make a mistake and then you talk to yourself and call yourself these negative names and you don't even think about it because you don't have the tools to start to change the relationship with yourself. And add on to it, you're comparing yourself with all the other humans. And so it just leaves you feeling, I think, really empty. And it can really cause like anxiety, depression, all these other sadness because of the way. And it always starts with the relationship with yourself. Jen, when you think, as you've coached ladies, even the work that you've done with yourself on the relationship with yourself, what would you tell the ladies how impactful this first foundational step is?
It's everything because, like you said, we carry our brain, our voice with us always. And whether it's something that we hear or something that is happening subconsciously, that just out of habit, it's always there. And so, if we are not learning to A, be aware of it, and then B, talk back to ourselves in a kinder way, or kind of check our thoughts, right? We find ourselves comparing to other people who we
Mm.
create this story of, they've got the perfect life, they feel so good about themselves, all these things, when in reality everybody has some sort of chatter going on in their lives, and it's just this comparison that we are less than, we are not as worthy, and it's just not the truth. And so I think that it is critical to just kind of step into that awareness and then begin learning to check our thoughts and learn how to talk back to ourselves.
Yeah, so good, Jen. As you were talking, I was thinking about the relationship with yourself. I've said this before, but my mom used to say, "Oh, you should love yourself," because she loved me so much. She's like, "Oh," and I didn't really know what that meant, and I didn't understand it either because my focus was always on loving others and being kind to others and how I should treat others. All the things, and I didn't realize that how I felt about myself really impacted how I treated others. When I think back to times where I was in I would say, quote unquote, a bad place. So maybe I think back to when I was at my highest weight and I was a single mom and I was just trying to like make it through the day, really. And I felt horrible. Like when I think about how I felt, and so then how I treated Taylor, how I treated others, I could fake it for a while, but ultimately I would get cranky. I would have negative thoughts or negative talk. I would do things because it's how I felt about myself. And I think it's hard for us to realize that how we treat others, our relationships with others, is a direct reflection of how we treat ourselves. I hear this a lot where folks are like, they need to respect me. They need to show up for me. They need to care for me. And I'm like, oh, interesting, because you're not doing that for yourself. And you treat others how to treat you. And, it's just interesting how we were never taught that. Really, and it's not that my mom, she just didn't have the words, I don't think, to like express what that meant. And I know, ladies, it can be very difficult, even as I'm talking now. And so, one of the things I'm doing next month in September is I'm doing a relationships camp. And this camp is a 1 day virtual event where ladies are going to come and we are going to dive into the first half of the day is going to be the relationship with yourself. The second half of the day is going to be the relationship with others. And why I wanted to do this camp is because the work that I have done on the relationship with myself and others has transformed my life. If I think about my weight, if I think about my career, I think about so many things. It all started with me working on me working on how I thought about things, how allowing myself to feel emotion, allowing myself to create new habits, new thinking. It all started with that. And I wanted to do this camp because I love immersion events. So an immersion event is like a day event where you're just diving in. And they're important because when you take things like this podcast 15 minutes at a time or 20 minutes at a time, it's great. Don't get me wrong. Because you switch your mind so quickly to something else, you don't have time to really like have the aha. You don't have the time to really write and do the work in the workbook and do the different things. And so these immersion events, why I'm actually, because I've never actually done an immersion event for the public, why I'm allowing it this time is because I have this deal where you get 30 days of Transform Boss and the camp in kind of this special package so that you can come in and spend the month of September on you. And this is what I know. When you do this, when you come to relationship camp, you not only will feel better, but you will have tools to have better relationships in your life. I want you to think right now, and Jen, maybe you can think of an example too. Like you have a relationship in your life and it's strained. Everything else is worse. Everything else is worse. You try to fake it, you try to put on the smile, but when you have a relationship in your life that is like maybe you're fighting or maybe you're not talking to each other, you're mad at this person, everything else is dim. And I tell you, people live years like that, years with resentment, angry because a parent didn't treat them the way they thought they should, or whatever, or they have a distant relationship, or they have a broken relationship. I mean, I could go on and on. And it is a horrible, horrible way to live. So you're saying to me, hey, Shan, I want to lose weight. Great, love it. I can help you with that. And if you don't start working on the relationship with yourself and the relationship with others, it will be more difficult for you. So, Jim, when you think about that, I know you've done a lot of relationship work. What do you want to share with the ladies?
I feel like when when there is a podcast or a class I'm going to teach, life loves to present opportunities to like live out what I'm talking about. And I just got in a disagreement with somebody, a relationship in my life over the weekend. And it's just, I had this aha of like, at first I was like, oh, I have to go talk about a podcast with relationships. Oh, great. Right. Like, who am I to do this? But then I was like, no, this is why I love this work. This is why this work is so impactful, is because I can still be a human and I can be upset and I can be frustrated and experience my emotions. And then I can come back and I remind myself that this is why, like Shannon and I are starting with talking about the relationship with ourselves, because most of the time our relationships they're that mirror of ourselves. And my aha was just lately, I have not been showing up for myself and taking the time that I want. And that is where this frustration from this other person not showing up the way I thought they should, right? That's my trigger when I know, like, aha, be onto yourself. When they're not showing up how I think that they should, it's really like, I'm not showing up how I need for myself. And so you wouldn't think that relationships and weight loss would correlate with one another, but they do so
Oh,
much in our life. And it's just this sweet little reminder of, right, we get to come back and we get to like take control of that relationship with ourselves and build it. And it's just life changing when you still get to be a human, be upset, be frustrated, but
yeah.
then you get to come back and like be real with yourself and check in with what you need to do and what the reality of the situation is.
Yeah. I mean, always, I've talked about this a lot. Whenever I think someone should do something, it's mostly because I need to do something. It's because
Uh-huh.
I'm not caring for myself. This is the ebb and flow of this work, too. There will be times where you are doing all the things and you're feeling great. And then a transition happens or a life event happens or, things get busy. I think of you, Jen, right? You're getting the boys back in school, right? Like all this stuff starts happening. And then suddenly, you're like, oh, wait, I haven't done some work on me. And what's so great about being in Transform Boss is that you get this reminder. This is why I love teaching it and coaching it because
Yes.
I'm like, oh, Shan, you need to like, right?
Yeah.
You need to take your own advice and coaching and coach yourself, right? Like it's so important. And so, ladies, I want to invite you to come and join us in the relationships camp. The ticket sales actually stop on August 30th. So if you're listening to it after, I apologize. We'll do it again for sure. But August 30th is the last day to purchase tickets. You can go to join Transform Boss. So join transformboss.com/, the letter R camp. R camp. And we'll put the link in the show notes too, so you have it. But really, after this podcast release, you only have a couple days to get your tickets. And again, it gives you the month of September and Transform Boss plus the relationship camp. And so it's a really amazing deal. I think you save like $60 off the membership. fees. So, ladies, it's a no brainer because everything starts with the relationship with yourself. And if you want better things in your life, you have to start thinking differently and feeling different. And, this work that I teach, that I coach is so that you can really start to work on the things in your life. It has impact. So you can feel better. So you can actually know what to do when certain circumstances come up. And I think so much of this, we just never were taught. And so I'm here to teach you because I love it. I love this work every day, all day. Well, our next week, I really want to kind of dive in with relationships with others and give you a couple quick tips on, the relationships with others. They're complicated. We're humans and we are complicated. And Jen and I are going to dive into that. All right, my love. Have a beautiful couple of weeks. I'll see you in the podcast. And then, I'm going to see you in Transform Boss too, right? Oh, that's right. All right. Thank you, Jen. All right. Bye, my loves.